Maki has become one of the most likable side characters in recent anime, and not only has she become likable because of her personality, but also recently her strength. But for some reason, there are still people out there who don't give her her props when it comes to her strength. Now, there are a lot of people who do, but there's a large amount of people who either 1, don't agree that she is equal to Toji now, or 2, know that she is but just disagrees and thinks that the story is bad for her being this strong. But hopefully by the end of this video, you get a better understanding of why and how Maki is as strong as she honestly is. First, I want to say if you enjoyed the content, then I would appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel, as I'll be posting videos every few days on different topics that you guys recommend me and a few of my own. First, getting into Maki, we should first talk about her backstory. We know that her and her twin sister Mai were born into the Zenin family, and they were born as outcasts. This is because twins are a bad omen. We know that Maki was born with a heavenly restriction, so she doesn't have these same curse energy capabilities as everyone else. Instead, she was gifted good physical abilities like Toji. But this isn't enough for the Zenin clan. If you can't wield Jujutsu, then you aren't one of them, and they will outcast you in a heartbeat. We know that she isn't promoted to a grade 2 or 1 because of this reason. The Zenin clan won't vouch for her and she just gets held down. Which brings us to Goodwill, and we can talk about her strength and Goodwill as sort of a timeline of progression. We'll go through the different events and how Maki grows in strength and why. And first, when we start talking about Goodwill, let's talk about the fight she has with Hanami. We see that when Megami throws her playful cloud and she hits Hanami, it sends Hanami flying off the roof. Now, yes, some of this power is Maki's, but a lot of it is Playful Cloud, as we know that Playful Cloud is a cursed tool that amplifies power. But the wielding of Playful Cloud does determine on the strength of the user, so she still has to be powerful herself in order to send opponents flying, like she did with Hanami. We also know that this was a very impressive feat, as Megami and Combo and Inumaki could barely even put a scratch in Hanami. We know that it even took piercing blood from Combo to even scratch Hanami. Now, Maki does get subdued later in the river by Hanami, but this is through the use of a curse technique with, the flowers, so it's not like she got outsped by Hanami in a up-close physical battle, but it's still an impressive feat for a Maki this early into the story. Now, we know that she was able to beat Miwa as well, but there's really no point in bringing that up. Miwa is pretty bad. Now, another thing that most people just glance over is that she was able to catch a bullet from Mai's revolver at point blank range. We see her just reach out and grab the bullet as it is traveling towards her. Even though this isn't a crazy feat in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, it still is an impressive feat for Maki, especially this early into the story. The next fight we should go over is when Maki, Nanami, and Naobito all have to fight against Dagon in the train station. Now, the thing is, Dagon is one of the 4 disaster curses along with Hanami, Jogo, and Mahito. It takes Naobito to speed up so they can finally get an advantage and think that they beat him down. While they're in his domain, Dagon focuses 70% of his Shikigami on Naobito and 30% on Maki and Nanami. So Dagon already knew that Maki and Nanami were the weaker of the 3. Like, honestly, throughout this whole altercation, the most impressive thing Maki does is block a kick from Dagon, but even when she blocks it, she gets sent flying. But even her getting sent flying is still a little bit impressive, I guess, because, she didn't get completely one-shot, but she still got sent flying anyways. But this Maki isn't the Maki that we're talking about anyways. The Maki that is extremely impressive is the Maki in recent chapters, and that is when she undergoes this change, and that is what I'm about to get into next. And in order to get into that, we have to talk about her fight against Naoya at the Zenin family household. Leading up to that fight, Maki's father led Maki and her sister Mai into the training room of the Zenin clan, and down here he just planned to leave them be and die to curses. But while they're down there, Maki and Mai have a sort of awakening together. Mai says that being twins has held Maki back, and that she is now prepared to die and she will leave everything to Maki so that she can ruin the Zenin clan. We didn't understand exactly what Mai meant in this moment, but moments later we see what happens. After Mai sort of turns herself into a sword and gives something to Maki, Maki undergoes an extreme change. Something happened within Maki's body, and we see that when she comes out of the dungeon and faces off against her father gets PTSD flashbacks of Toji. He says that he's tried so hard and for so long, but his body cannot forget this fear, and we see Maki being compared to Toji already. What we know now is that all of the cursed energy in Maki's body has been reduced to 0. Before, she still had cursed energy. She just couldn't see curses, so she had to wear the glasses. She couldn't wield cursed energy in the form of any curse techniques or anything, but she still had it, and this is what was holding her back. So now that she has faced off against her father and awakened, she has 0 cursed energy. The boost that she gets from this heavenly restriction is massive. It is similar to the boost that Toji got, which is why her father is so scared when he sees her. Now, we don't really have to talk about the fight with Ogi, if you even want to call it a fight, because Maki just blitzes him and cuts his head off. And there's one thing I sort of want to go over really quickly about this, and it's that some people think that Ogi is equal to Naobito, and that's because Ogi says that the only thing he was ever inferior to when it comes to Naobito is just the value and worth of his children. But there is a statement from an interview with Gege, and I'll put it on the screen, where Gege says that Ogi simply didn't know what he was talking about. No, Ogi is not equal to Naobito, and it's pretty apparent. He's actually pretty weak. Now let's get into the fight that she has against the Hei. One of the members of the Hei named Ranta says that we have to kill Maki. As you can see, she's become like Toji. The Zenin clan only exists because of Toji's whim. He's basically saying that at any point, Toji could have come and stopped the Zenin clan from existing, which is what Maki is doing right now. She's literally running through the clan by the time she gets to the Hei. And the Hei have trouble fighting her, obviously. They're just pretty weak. She runs through the Hei, kills them all, and now we have to get into the important part, and that is her fight against Naoya. Now, obviously, at the beginning of the fight, we see that Naoya holds Toji in some high esteem. He says that Maki is not Toji and that Naoya is the one who should be standing with them. While saying this, he actually is overwhelming Maki at this point, as she doesn't really understand what's going on. If you know, Naoya and Naobito use a projection sorcery, and we see that when they first encounter opponents, they have a hard time figuring out what is happening. It's like they know that Naoya is fast, but there's also a trick going on. We see it when Naoya comes across Yuji and Choso. They know he's super fast, but they know that something is off as well. So when coming across it for the first time and fighting it, it makes sense that Maki was getting beat up a bit. Now we see a moment where Maki can get up and start to brace herself. And the way we know projection sorcery works is that when you touch the opponent, they freeze, and they have to follow this predetermined set of 24 frames. And if they don't, then they freeze for 1 full second. This is what Naoya plans to do to Maki as he's building up speed. He even says strength is weight and speed. And he'll punch through Maki at top speed. Now we see Maki open her arms and she's going to brace him. And we even see her say, "Let me embrace you." And this is when Naoya says, "You're going for a head-on collision, huh?" And he touches the side of her arm. And this is where the manga says, when the palm of a combatant activating projection sorcery touches an opponent, that opponent must also move at 24 frames per second. Failure means 1 second of freezing. Failure means 1 second. Meanwhile, Naoya is still moving at top speed. And this is where Naoya says, "You are planning to receive the brunt of my attack and stop me from moving even if it broke your ribs. But I won't fall for such an obvious bait. You really are an imposter." And this is when Maki turns around surprisingly and punches Naoya in the face. And this is when Maki understands what projection sorcery truly is. She says, 24 times right. You and Naobito aren't just fast, something felt strange. You make 24 movements per second. With this body, I can finally see that. And then we see Naoya try to still hold on to his ego by calling her an imposter, and he gets one shot, punched dead into the ground. Now, if you notice, Maki says that with this body, I can finally see that. There's something when she has Toji's body that allows her to see through things in ways that she wasn't able to before. If you remember, the way Toji fights is because all of his 5 senses are extremely enhanced. Now that she has undergone this exchange with her body, her 5 senses are now extremely enhanced. She can feel things differently now. She can see things differently now. And we see that more in her fight when Naoya comes back as a curse, and I'll get into that in a second. But as for now, the most important thing to remember from this fight is that she can see through projection sorcery now. We saw that Naoya had trouble. He's like, "I can't accept Maki being equal to Toji. You are not the one who deserves to stand with him, and I'm going to beat you." But then we see that Maki literally defeats him in one punch. Now here, I will also put this on the screen. It is a translation. when Gege was doing Q&As in the 2022 autumn issue. And here it says, when Mai sacrificed herself, Maki gained strength of unmatched caliber. After that, she destroyed the Zenin family. The decision to expel the Zenin family from 3 great families is currently on hold. As you see here, it says that Maki gained strength of unmatched caliber. Now we see Naoya come back as a curse, and he is in a worm form. And the best thing he does is, hit Maki while she's not fully prepared. But this form of Naoya isn't that important. The more important form of Naoya is when he turns into this skull form. And this is where things actually get interesting. Now, when he goes into this skull form and starts to rush Maki, she actually does get hit badly. It says, Naoya's cursed spirit body drew in air through inlets and used thrusting pressure and cursed energy to compress and eject it for increased propulsion. And then we see him flying directly towards Maki. And here it says, Naoya's speed had reached Mach 3. No way, and to think you beat me once. He completely blitzes Maki here. Now, another interesting thing to think about, but I don't think we get a full explanation for it, is that when Maki and Kamo are preparing to engage Naoya again, she says, just give me 5 minutes. I can heal my injuries. So stay alive for 5 minutes. Now, it is very impressive that in just 5 minutes she can heal injuries that she has. It's just something interesting I thought I would bring up. Now, we see that Daido and the sumo guy pull up to help Maki and Kamo, and this is where Maki begins to undergo a mental change. When Daido slashes Naoya in half, Maki says, "What was that? My attacks didn't do that." And we see that Maki looks back at Daido's words. "If I see everything else, what is it I'm not seeing? What's the difference between me and that guy?" She is comparing herself to Toji. She doesn't understand why it is that there is a gap between her and Toji's skills, even though physically they are the same. But we know why when she goes into Mio's domain, and this explains everything. Mio says to Maki, "You're too tense, girl. It's taking away your edge. Do you like sumo?" And then he challenges her to a sumo bout. And then Maki agrees and says, "Sure, fine, let me blow off some steam." She wonders what it is. What is it? What am I not seeing? The sumo guy beats her in the first initial grapple and says, "So tell me what's wrong. Why can't you focus what's on your mind?" And this is where we learn Maki doesn't have anyone to call a teacher. She never rejected that idea, nor was she too proud. It just never occurred to her to rely on others to make herself stronger. There's things that the sumo guy knows that he needs to explain to Maki, but he says that the only way I can explain it is through sumo. While they're fighting, he says, "You've become entangled." Maki says, "In what?" "Yourself, others, curses, basically people. But isn't sumo about grappling?" "Yes, in the ring, one person clashes with another in an intense back and forth. The wrestlers themselves, however, develop outside the ring. Pressing your opponent in the ring requires stepping outside the ring, even though you actually can't. At the moment of impact, everything that led up to entering the ring flows into the combatants. It's like smelling light or seeing sound. You sense everything about your opponent and yourself. And then the body before your eyes and even victory and defeat themselves become meaningless. In other words, the samurai was talking about freedom. This is what Maki was missing the entire time. Even when she gained this body of Toji's, she was missing freedom. And here Mio says, "Now you'll just have to experience it for yourself." Maki beats Mio in the grappling battle and says, "I'm at my best." This was the mental change she needed to go through. Now she feels free. We also know that this freedom is a recurring theme within the Jujutsu Kaisen manga. If you remember back with Megumi when he was fighting the Finger Bearer, after he freed his mind, he was able to open a domain for the first time. We see when Hanami is fighting against Yuji and Todo, he has a flashback to talking with Mahito, where he has to fight with fun in order to gain strength. It's just a recurring thing throughout the manga that your mind needs to be clear in order to fully wield the strength that you have. When she exits Mio's domain, Kamo and Daido look at her and says, "She's totally changed. What could have happened inside that domain in such a short time? It's like she suddenly grew. Did that Kappa do something?" And here she re-engages Naoya for the second time. And while she's falling, she says, "Everything around me will tell me how Naoya will move. Without glasses, I couldn't see what others were able to see. I gained this body thanks to Mai, and now I can see curses without glasses. I was satisfied to be like everyone else. that person would have reached that height. That person would have thrown a katana without hesitation. That person would have been able to handle everything at that high speed. It isn't enough to be like everyone else. Something only I can see, something only that person could see, that exists. Obviously, she is talking about Toji in this moment. There were things that Toji was able to see and deflect that she was not able to. And here she says, the atmosphere around us may seem empty, but differences in temperature and air density create scattered surfaces. I just need to seize them. And then we see as Naoya begins to get overwhelmed, he opens a domain. Now, whilst inside the domain, Daido and Mio get completely screwed over. And then this is where Maki finishes Naoya. She simply just enters Naoya's domain and cuts him through the back. And we get an explanation for how she was able to do so. Like Toji, Maki doesn't have any curse energy, so barrier techniques treat her as a building. Naoya must use an actual structure as the barrier's exterior like Fushiguro did in Tokyo Colony 1. But unless she consents, he can't trap her inside the domain. Because of this body that Maki has, she basically is treated like a building. And at first, Naoya doesn't understand the grave situation he is in. He says, "Stupid trash, you couldn't finish me off with one blow. You lose because you can no longer move in this domain." But we learn about this blade that Maki has, the blade that Mai left behind. It was actually a replica of the cursed tool Split Soul Katana. It can bypass the toughness of many substances to cut the soul directly. However, exerting that power fully requires eyes that can observe even the souls of inorganic matter. And because of this, Naoya dies. I want to quickly touch on everything that led to Maki gaining this strength. There's something with this new body that she gained, something that Toji was able to wield. And it wasn't just the body itself, as we know she still had a level to go up even after she gained the body. It was mental freedom. After gaining this mental freedom, she was fully equal to Toji, and that is what we learn right after she kills Naoya. It says, a demonic fighter equal to Toji zenin was fully realized. This is because of this mental factor. I hope I made it a bit easier to understand, and if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you could like and subscribe to the channel, as I'll be posting videos every few days on different topics that you guys recommend me and a few of my own. Thanks for watching, see you next time.